one of the fascinating things about GDC is that you get to find out a little bit about games that you had no idea existed even. And one of those games is Armello, a sort of a board game, card game hybrid that's coming out of League of Geeks. So can you describe it to someone who doesn't know anything about it?
Yeah, certainly. So you hit it spot on. It's a digital card and board game. If you're a fan of obviously card and board games, then this will really speak to you. So what we're trying to do is basically take the soul and the heart of card and board games and just make it digital, like bring it to life on a digital platform, and that's Armello. So you control. You play as one of the heroes of the 4 animal clans of Armello, and you're questing out across Armello to take on the king who's gone mad and is evil and is corrupted by this dark force called the Rot. And so you're questing out to save Armello, and you move around the board until you think you're powerful enough to make a move.
So I think it was quite a fascinating story to hear how you sort of went about sort of this creating this developer and sort of where you come from and your roots and so on and so forth.
Yeah, so we all have jobs at other studios, and we've been working in games, and we have people from other industries sort of contributing on this project, and we just wanted to collaborate together and make something in our spare time. So this is our passion project, and we all just came together and said, hey, let's make a project, and that project became Armello. So there's 5 directors, and we own the company, and we run it, and we sort of pay for everything out of our back pocket. And then we've got these amazingly talented team of professionals from all around the world, in America, New Zealand, Australia, and they're just giving their time to the project in exchange for some profit share, which we all split at the end.
And you also told me about how you sort of prototyped the game, that you actually started out with an actual board game and cards and sort of physical things, and sort of trying to come up with what would be a good solution for the actual game.
Yeah, it's really fascinating actually, because we designed the game specifically for digital platforms. We're making a board game for the iPad initially, but we spent 8 months prototyping it on paper, and we went through 16 versions. So the first meetings, we'd be cutting out bits of paper and moving little pieces around the board, and changing things or writing cards down quickly that we thought were cool. We did that for 8 months, and then when we felt it was right, because we never sat down and went, let's make Settlers of Catan meets Magic the Gathering, or let's make Civilization meets Talisman, or anything like that. We just knew that we wanted to make a game that at the end, when we're all done, we could come back together and we could play it on our iPads, and we would sit around and create a story together and have this magical adventure, in the space of 15 to 30 minutes. We'd been enemies, we'd become friends, formed alliances, had this epic rat race to the throne, and we wanted to capture that spirit of adventure that we found in those games and movies from when we were young, like the Dark Crystal and then the Ghibli films and stuff. And so it took us a while to hone in on exactly what that was, but yeah, it was a fun process. It was awesome.
So is that what you're gunning for, that 15-30 minute experience? Because tablets and when I play board games, they tend to take a long time.
Yeah.
So was that something that you wanted to nail down?
Yeah, very much so. So and that again is interesting, because when you're prototyping it on paper, when you play an actual board game, like Risk is a great example. When you play a game of Risk, it can take some games take 5 hours, right? Like you play them over weekends, or you'll play one game over multiple board game sessions. But Risk on the iPad, you can finish a game in 10 to 15 minutes, and that's the brilliance of board games and these tabletop games on digital platforms, is that the game master is the game. It's like everything's being crunched in the background, you're not counting dice, just all those little time sinks are gone. And so even though our prototype sometimes would take 2 hours to get through or something, we know that that's going to condense down into a 15 to 30 minute experience. And that was important for us with Armello as well, because we don't want people to have to sit there on their iPad and play this 2-hour game. We want it to be this fast-paced, high adventure where people just jump online. They've got, 30 minutes at the end of the night, and they're like, all right, I'm going to go on an epic journey, and then they just fire up Armello.
It's been quite a popular thing to sort of adapt popular board games to the tablets, but you're trying to bring something, because it's a uniquely digital-only title. What can you do to sort of, when you have that extra freedom?
That's a really good question, and that's something that we would constantly ask ourselves going through the process, and especially prototyping. So, and it's funny because when you're prototyping on paper, you get that board game and everything, but if you're prototyping for what's going to be a digital game, there are some things that we couldn't even prototype on paper. So a great one is we've got a stealth mechanic in the game. So when a hero moves onto a forest tile at night, the other players in the game can't actually see where they are. And you can move through these like linked hexes of forest tiles without being seen and get a combat bonus. And that was something, obviously, what do you say? Like, hey, close your eyes while I move my piece, things like that. So that's what we're doing now. We're at pre-alpha, and I just showed you the game, and it looks amazing, and there are like little birds flying around and everything. And we put all this like polish in, but even though some of the major systems aren't actually on the digital platform yet, because we know the game works, what we're trying to do now is take that board game and find out whether it can actually be brought to life on a digital platform, whether you can do things like, we've got a full day-night system, with shadows moving across the game that fundamentally affects gameplay. And these are these cool things that you can do on a digital platform that, on an actual board game are just these abstract concepts, like we would just flip a card that would be a sun to a moon, but in the game it's just so much more vivid and literal, and it's very evocative.
Speaking of that day-night cycle, could you touch a little bit on what kind of things that changed with that?
Certainly. So there's 4 players, and each player has a turn in a round, and then at the end of the round it goes from day to night, and then you have a turn at night, and then it goes from night to day. And so that's a major motif that goes through the entire game, and actually into the world of Armello too, because we spent a lot of time building this universe. And so, for example, we've got the dice here. We created our own custom dice. And there are things like the moon symbol here, for example, at night, that's a hit, whereas the sun during the day is a hit, and they're a miss on, obviously the opposing times of day. Stealth, only for, the standard implementation of stealth is when you go on a forest tile at night, that's when it happens. It's not during the day. So, when night's a very treacherous time. In the world of Armello, the day's beautiful, it's magical, it's this very happy time, but when it's night, everyone's locking their doors, and that's when the sort of, the Banes come out and move across the land, which are these dark creatures born of this power called the Rot, which is killing the king.
So if we talk a little bit about the depth of the sort of the card aspect of the game, we've been talking a lot about the board. What does that bring to it?
Yeah, this is another thing. We didn't want the card play to just be some token thing. So in a lot of board games, when you get the cards, they're just like, they just have a little effect on them or something like that. We wanted the cards to be a major part of it. So it was very important to us that we designed a board game that could almost stand on its own, and then designed a card game that had really interesting card play as well, that layered over the top of that. So you can do things like, we've got different decks. We've got 3 different decks, and they have different play styles. So we've got a trickery deck and a spell deck, and trickeries for those like the Rat Clan, the political players, the players that like to backstab or play the scheming strategic route, and their cards like like a Weasel Assassin or something that you'll play to the board that will ambush another player, or maybe a card that gives you favor in court over another player. And then we've got big epic spells for the magic based characters. And then, of course, we've got all your classic, really evocative adventure tropes, like items, like just like an adventurer's kit that you equip, and we've also got followers where you can recruit party members. So we've got these really interesting characters from the world of Armello that you discover as you're playing the game, and you recruit them into your party.
And what's the roadmap ahead for this game? Sort of how do you want to release it? Where? Yeah,
well, because it's our passion project, and we're just so committed to this thing being amazing. It's sort of a when it's ready sort of thing. Like, I think the biggest travesty for us would it be going out when we're not totally happy with it. So we're hoping to get something done by the end of the year, maybe early next year if we feel like it really needs a bit of polish. But we're trying to get something in people's hands as soon as possible. So hopefully, if people are going to be attending the next PAXs that are coming up, then they might be able to get a shot at playing Armello.
And it's iOS only or Android?
Well, it's coming out on iPad initially, and then we're platform agnostic at League of Geeks. We just want to roll it out everywhere, as soon as we can, but do it properly. So, if it's going to come to PC, we'll take the time and we'll do it right.
Right. Thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.